Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can find out more about us at officehours.global. If you have questions, of course, you can go to askofficehours.global. So now if you're in Mukana, of course, you can ask questions. You can vote on those questions. You can chat with each other. If you're not there, though, 24/7, you can ask your questions and we'll roll them into the next show or sometimes into the same show. Make sure that those questions are well formed. Make sure you haven't asked them before. Make sure they don't have a bunch of questions in them. So one question at a time. So if we see a bunch of question marks of how did it go and what did happen and all that stuff, we will tend to skip those questions. So take that into account. But go ahead and throw those into askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. 24/7, you can ask those questions there. But again, we can jump into Mukana, and which is where we're going to go right now. And let's jump into the first question. Jeffrey, what do we have?
We're going to start today with Andy Kokendorfer from Vera, Florida, asking, how do I use attention psychology to maximize compelling content for live streamed events? The amount of attention devoted to an event at that time it occurs is a good predictor of the likelihood that I will be consciously remembered.
Go ahead, JJ.
Well, with any content, when I choose what I want to watch, I try to find content that either is known content from a contributor that I've already listened to, and I'll remember that content because of the protein. If it's garbage, if it's a lot of filler, or if it's a presenter that hasn't refined that in the past, for me, I won't be connected to the content. I won't be connected to the person. I won't be connected to what the meaning is of that content. And then going back to kind of quote Sky story, looking at in the process of telling a story, how to get to that key component of what you want them to remember at the right time, with the right timing, either inflection or how we interact with other people. As you'll see, whenever you walk into any public place, how you interact with other people, are you compelling? Can you hold a conversation with a complete stranger, which unfortunately, I have a neon sign that says, talk to me, that only strangers can see.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So Andy didn't mention anything about it being a live event or a virtual event.
Live.
Or
content for live streamed events.
Oh, well, yeah. So it's live, but it's over. I'm talking about live as in people are hybrid or anything like that. When it comes to on air type content. Let me start again. When it comes to on-air type content, there's a lot of different factors that can be involved, especially if you've got multiple cameras. There have been a lot of studies as to how fast switching back and forth between cameras can work for. If you're talking about, people at a live event, then it becomes something as the speaker can do different things to make that more compelling by movement on the stage. When going back into the live streamed event, there are some compelling arguments about using specific sounds like whooshes and dings to keep people attentive. But it's also about reinforcing the subject that you're talking about. Stating the subject at the beginning of your speech, bringing it back, reinforcing it, saying, hey, this is where we're getting to, and then finally make the landing and do it perfectly.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, we discussed this in a question the other day, and I asked how much should we try to engage the viewer with visual content, etc. And if I remember correctly, the answer was you shouldn't be doing too much. But one thing that we are always trying to get our speakers that are on the floor to remember is to be very consistent. Do the training, so rehearse and rehearse and rehearse before you go on the stage, even if it's physical or digital. And the other thing is they always bring with them some decks with a lot of text, and we tend to throw them away. And they are often, as we all
show killers.
Yeah, they are really show killers, and it's mostly filled with their own talking points. Let them have those talking points in front of them on the display instead, and then replace the content. We actually have one conference where we did this AI test. we took the content of each slide and put that into a prompt and got out pictures instead and used that as a background instead of the text. So there are different ways of doing this, and always keep them short. So 20 minutes is the usual. We try to get them down to 12 or 13 minutes instead. So there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of different things, absolutely, and some of them are live and some live streaming. We'll stick with live streaming right now. There's a couple things that that we know, and what we measure in a lot of the shows that I work on is average view time. How long did someone stay? So what is going to increase average view time? The most effective thing to increase average view time is Q&A. There's no close second. Like, there is no close second. It is it's like the reason we do it here is because it increases the average view time by 6 to 10%. I'm sorry, 6 to 10 times. 6 to 10 times how many times from all of our measurements when you actually have a Q&A. This is why when we do it here is we just open it up and start doing Q&A, because I know that that's the secret, and I know that because I've done 2,000 events online. And so we know which ones when they had them, when we didn't have it. We get to watch the average view time. We get to watch all those stats in the back end, and so we're looking at all this data all the time. So we know that Q&A is the thing that solves most of your average view time problems. The other issue that we got into was. This is not a study. Everyone always asks, did you do a study and did you publish it or anything else? No, we didn't. We were hired to do this by a company. So we were hired to do I almost stopped making content when I did this study, because we were brought in to look at it. And I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again, is we did eye tracking. So we took this, there's a little eye tracker, and it watches your eyes. And we just said, just watch the video. And just do whatever you would do on the computer, And so people would do, we let them log into their Gmail. We get your environment the way you would normally have it. Anyway, so what we found was that you would lose if you put up a slide. If you talked for 6 to 7 minutes, you would lose the active viewership of 75% of your audience, roughly. Now, that means that they're doing something else. Like, they've now moved. And if you think about your own behavior, this isn't that far out of whack. They'd move your little video over to the corner. They'd start checking email. They'd surf the web. They'd be tweeting or texting or whatever. But they're just kind of listening to you in the background. That's after only 6 to 7 minutes of you talking. When you put up a slide, you would lose the same number of people in 60 to 90 seconds. Like, they would just fade out. And nowadays, we find that to be slow from our own experience. So that was the study. That was 15 years ago. Usually it's 30 to 60 seconds. We think it has shortened to where you really can't leave slides up for very long before you start burning up your audience. Now, they're not going to leave your show. They may be still listening to your show, but they're really not paying attention anymore. So not everything's made equally. Like, slides that we did find that slides that had very little text were much more effective. So we ended up with a lot more. So if we had a lot less text, we could stretch that out a little bit. Most of the slides that I build don't have any text on them, or they have just little signifiers on them, a handful of little bit of words and everything else. They're images that are designed to underline what I'm talking about. I use a slide deck to visualize the words that I'm saying. That's what it's there for. Like, I'm making you diagrams. I'm making you things so that to underline what I'm talking about. I am definitely never, ever, 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 never, never, never am I putting the words up that I'm saying. That is a disaster. You should never do that. Ever do that. So you illustrate with it. If you want to hand something out that people can remember, then hand it out. But you do not, when you're talking, you're trying to hold their attention. You can give them a handout, and I separate those things out. And they'll say, well, I have to leave the deck behind. Well, sure. Leave the deck behind, but you could also you go into Pages or Word or whatever and build them a nice little beautiful little thing that they can read. It's got the same diagrams that you had there. You do all kinds of things that make it look nicer. But do not try to use your deck as your notes. There is a notes section, as Ronnie pointed out, in your thing. You do not need, I think that most people put the words that they're going to say into the deck because they don't know how to use their presentation platform. And so there is a way to do that. There's ways to display it really nicely. There's all kinds of, there are so many tools in Keynote and PowerPoint. and slides, to put confidence monitors out, to have all kinds of other things. When I'm doing this, I've got three different monitors managing my presentation when I do it out of this platform here, out of my office. And so those are the things that I would say that you really need to think about, is making your slide deck really visual. Use those animations. Don't be silly, not silly animations, but just moving from one thing to the next. All simple stuff. I like to do things where some of my slides are full screen and some of them are comped over top of me, like appearing like around me, and I mix it up so you don't know what's going to happen. And I do it because I think that, oh, this is a place where I might talk a lot. I don't want to necessarily be under a slide, and this is a place where I do want you to focus on the slide, so I'm going to put it over top of myself. But for me, I also move very quickly. I learned this. I was doing something with a founder for a pretty big company that handles payments for creators, and his slides, wow, like just they change every half second. It feels like it is just constantly moving slides, and I really learned that speed was really interesting. It was a little too much for me, but it was really interesting. So in a 20-minute presentation, I'll typically have 35 to 40 slides. And I'll be cutting back and forth very fast, moving from one thing to the next. Excuse me. So moving quickly, again, what was talked about a little bit, rehearsing is really, really important so that you know how you're going to say it and you've said it there. But I don't have a script. I don't memorize things. I say what's there to say. I've done this, usually when I've done a presentation for someone, I've done it 10 or 15 times, and I go through it with my slide deck and I go, oh, I really wish this slide did this, or I'll see where it wants to move. Like, I really wish this was outlined or this was circled. And I use things like this. So I have a slide, and I purposefully have a slide that doesn't have a circle around it, because when I'm talking, I want to do that around it, because that's an interactive experience, a component to that experience that is different. But most importantly, I want to get to questions as fast as possible. The mistake that most people make, and the reason that we don't do that is because our question systems are bad. But everyone needs to reverse or think about reversing the way that they do their show, which is that most people talk for 45 minutes and open it up for 10. What you want to do is talk for 10 and open it up for 45. And what is the best, and I know that Hughsnet's talked about this, we've done it in events in the past, is release all your content. The thing you were going to do, the side deck, release it all 1 to 2 weeks ahead of time. Let everybody watch all that content. You think that they're coming for the content, for that slide deck. They are not. They are coming to hang out with each other, have lunches, talk to each other. And when you have them all in one place, what's the most useful thing? Talking to them, doing the thing that they could have done on YouTube or on a web page, or interacting with them and answering their questions. And so when putting that content out early, letting them see it, letting them think about it, you'll find that only 10 or 15% of your audience will actually watch the videos. And you'll think that that's a failure, but it doesn't matter, because that 10 or 15% will ask all the questions, and it'll increase the value of the show for everyone. So the thing is that it's kind of a counterintuitive way to think about it. But you actually just want to put it out for everyone, encourage them to do it, let them do let the 10 or 15%, and they get the most value because they watched it and now they have questions. So the people who watch the videos ahead of time get the most value out of the show, but everybody gets more out of it because now they're driving that conversation, and a conversation. Socrates figured this out 2,500 years ago, and we're still doing presentations for 45 minutes. It's great. All right, next question.
Next question comes from Clive Kitchener from Souk, British Columbia. I recorded a Zoom meeting via macOS 14.5 screen capture edition, or screen capture entire screen, excuse me. And the video is perfect, but there is no audio. What setting did I miss?
Go, Ronnie.
Yeah, when you start a screen capture app, there is a toolbar where you obviously hit the record button. And in the right end of that, if I remember correctly, is a small drop-down option menu, similar to what you get in Zoom audio settings. And you can change settings like countdown timer, etc. And in the lowest part of that one, I think you can choose the microphone or the sound source for the recording being recorded. So just double check that you have the correct input set there.
Next question.
Next up is from Douglas Carmichael asking, what advantages does SpaceCommz have versus Unity? The website does not have many details.
Or JJ?
It's still in beta, so that's why it doesn't have many details. So far, I've seen one that is entirely cloud-based. So you don't have to convince someone to house it for you in Detroit for a couple of years. And that means, the admins can access from anywhere. I just signed up for the beta about a week ago, and I've got access, but I have yet to have more friends. So if you want to be my friend, I'd love to set up SpaceCommz with you and start testing it. As a person who uses Unity every day and trying to sell Unity, this could be a great solution for companies that are looking for a phone solution that allows them to administer everything outside. What I'm a little worried about is inbound traffic, whether or not there's going to be a requirement. But again, I have to beta it as well. So I just signed up last Tuesday, and I've got a beta copy. So be my friend.
Good, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I signed up. I just signed up myself, and because it's so new. Actually, I think we'd had discussions about this at NAB, and I think that's where it came from. Was just the idea that there's a lot of problems with Unity that they're not looking to fix, or nobody's seeing them trying to fix it.
I don't think Unity's fixing anything. I'm waiting for Unity to some year just come out and go, and now we've rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up, which is what they should do given how much money they're making on
exactly.
it. But it doesn't. Yeah, it hasn't changed much in the last decade. So, go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, so to answer your question, to get more information on how to use it and what's the options, you just sign up for the beta and you'll get access for, I think it's up to 5 friends. If you have more than 4 friends, you should probably just ask for a few more. They are continually and rapidly changing everything and adding features as we speak. Yesterday, they had a big push with new functionality. So there is an increased number of functionalities. And if you are joining the beta, you can also add your own inputs and needs. I'm not sure they will be putting everything into the software, but it's rapidly being better. And we have been testing this from kind of day one. And it seems that it could be a really, really good contender in the easy to use intercom solutions out there. It's it's up to the team behind it if they have success with everything they want to do with it, and I think they will be doing that.
Next question.
Next question is from Paul Walhus from Hot Springs, Arkansas. You can have many iPhones, but only one Apple Watch. If you have multiple iPhones, how do you quickly find out which one is tethered to your Apple Watch?
I don't know how to find it quickly because I usually move to whatever my newest phone is. I move my watch to that. I don't know how I would just, if I had a bunch of phones, I don't know how much. I would say hopefully it's the last one that you had before the one you have. If you've left it more than one phone, I'd be a little concerned. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So the only way I know of is you can send a signal through either Find My or on the watch. You just call up the settings, and then the top right one is Find My Phone, and you hit that, and it starts to sound off.
There you go. Next question.
Next question is from Mickey Makachor from the Philippines. JJ's on the panel. It's been a long time. How have you been? What interesting and cool things have you been up to lately? Because
Mickey never talked to JJ, so this is like this is as close. I don't know. I think this is like, I don't know. We might have to define like there's a Cochrane where you throw it to yourself. There's a Mickey maybe that is just a pure setup.
Screencast.
When he punches you in the face with the question.
Yeah.
So what? So lots. I mean, it's been since panel a while. Current and recent projects include Moses. Moses has asked for some of the brilliant builds that Jonas has built in the past and still continues to use: remote camera control, remote control interfaces using multiple nodes to create a probe inside a remote environment and how to do much what we do in Belfast, the Belfast method, accidental controls, but then extending that to the actual controllers. So I met with Florian at NAB. The time I spent not producing at NAB or not working at NAB, and it was a great contact because one of Fenwick's great friends, Danny Zemenek, he's also been working with them on how to make camera function move in a human fashion versus just robots. Don't let the robots take over everything. So working with them, doing a little bit of work. DCA, obviously, David Carroll Associates. I've been building and integrating with many different kinds of projects in many different kinds of places, including, continued Zoom integration using Zoom Production Studio, building that out for a number of clients who were looking at hybrid locations. The Reagan Library, that's one that we're looking at real soon. That's an RFP, so that's public. What else? Working with Mickey. I don't know if you've heard of Mickey Makachor. Every day, 6-7 hours a day, so it's kind of hilarious. What else? Trying my hardest to bend into, not lean into, but bend into. When you're this big, you have to start bending more. The different kinds of projects that other people are doing, like looking at Jonas. Jonas is very exciting. All the things that he's working in, trying to be part of that same projection, that rainbow, wandering along that rainbow to see what's on the other side. Sky Gleason, Mad in the Kitchen's coming back. She was doing better after her diagnosis and stuff from last year. So there's another project possibly out in Palm Desert that we're working on. So look out for MITK in this next year in September. Lots of things. I mean, I just kind of don't stop. And then today tonight's our Easter. So Marty Brennis and I will be hanging out together at my local place in Ross.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Good to have you on the panel, JJ. Maybe we can drag you on more often. We'll see what we can do. It's good to have you. Next question.
Next question comes from Stefan Fischer from Würzburg. Is the webcam function of Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Cameras via USB with the latest software update 8.6 been tested? How did it go?
Oh, I don't know if we've tested it yet. I have them sitting behind me. There's no excuse for not doing it other than just a lot of production. So we'll see if we can get that. Keep on asking, but I will now have this on my little to-do and see if I can't work through this for you. Sorry about that. Next question.
Next up is from Carson Jones from Toronto, Canada. What audio levels range do you set your mics for live streaming? And this is a QR code.
Good, Ronnie.
Yeah, for live streaming, it's here at office hours, we have standardized at minus 24 LUFS, which is kind of a good general volume out in the Zoom meetings we're using and out on the broadcast. And this is also differentiated a little bit between the channels you are sending to. Some of the channels can require you or wish that you have another level. So check with the distribution channel you are actually distributing through. It could be some specific values for that, but most usually it's measured in LUFS. And if you are unable to do that measurement in your software you are streaming via or the hardware you are using, you should definitely get some kind of tool or plugin to make it easier for you to watch the levels. Here in my home studio, I'm using something called Julian, which is a plugin that is free if you're using just the basic functions and gives you a nice view over the levels also over time. So it visualizes the levels for you. So try to install that if you have the option for doing that.
Good, Jeffrey.
So with YouTube, if you're doing music, they recommend around 14 LUFS. And I like to stick around 14 to 18 when it comes to do my my YouTube videos. But if you're using a VU meter like Ronnie was suggesting, and you're just eyeballing it, you want to stay in the lower end of the yellow from the VU meters. And if you start hitting red in there, you probably want to turn down a little bit, but you might want to get something with a little bit more accuracy if you're just eyeballing it through a VU meter.
Go, JJ.
And the VU meter we use here is WLM meters. Mickey's been kind enough to set those up for so many of our folks here, and we use it on a daily basis to verify. And I apologize, we haven't been able to see that very well lately because of the rebuild in Detroit. But this, I use this always. Every meeting I go into, I verify because I can't always see what level I've come in. And Teams is horrible at taking. Even if you tell it don't, it'll overtake your sound settings, your audio settings.
Teams is just horrible.
It's
you don't have to say horrible at, because you just make this long list of all the things that's horrible.
Horrible.
So
Absolutely horrible.
I don't do shows without some kind of metering system. So typically it's either Sonic Atom or Spectre on the Mac are the ones that we use for those. We really would love to see, because we use Nobe Omniscope for video for our stuff, we would love to see Tom do something with that. Hey, it'd be really good. Look at this. And not that I haven't sent him hey, this is really cool. Isn't this really awesome? And so we'd love to see it all in one package, but right now we use those. The Spectre has a lot more detail than Sonic Atom, but Sonic Atom is a lot less expensive than Spectre. Sonic Atom, I think, is in the $80 range or something like that. Spectre's in the $300 or $400 range. And I've been using Spectre since it was released, and went through kind of a hard time for a while. Spectre with an RE. And really, one of the things that we look for is the volume history, or loudness history, where you're looking you're looking at it over time, so you can see when it can be bouncing on a meter, but you can really see what's going on over time. And what we do is, in Spectre, we can actually set the color based on the levels, and so you can have it be like purple, and that tells us, oh, that's too low. So if I can just look over, and the reason we did this was because I've done things where we're streaming 20 rooms at the same time. We've got 20 rooms coming in, and we basically split those. So we've got 5 monitors, 5 4K monitors. We've got 1080p on each one of them, split into each one of them, and they're all showing us the different rooms, and so that we can look over and see 20 rooms in quads. And what I need to be able to do is know what's going on in that room audio-wise without having to listen to it. And so there's a lot of things I can see. So I can see things like I can see the ground loops. Like just looking over, I can just go, oh, that's got a ground loop, or it's too low, or it's too high, or it's, so what we would do is if it was peaking at a certain level, it's going to be purple, it's green if it's peaking the right way, yellow if it's getting close, red if it's starting to get close to actually over-modulating. So those are the things that we kind of look at. I will say that for this show, again, negative 24 LUFS, what I'm looking for usually, for broadcast, we typically are peaking. If you just go to peak, not LUFS, we usually are peaking at negative 10 or negative 12. That's kind of in the range that we look at. For incoming, and we still may do that for the incoming, settings for a microphone. Oftentimes we push that a little harder for live streams, and in fact, the output of our live streams typically is peaking at -3. So it is really just slamming that output, because the number one complaint we get about any live event is that it's not loud enough, because people can turn it down, they just can't turn it up. So what we do is we end up having at -6, we have a compressor that is like a 3 or 4 1 compressor that's starting at -6 that's gonna slam down that bit, and then right at, I believe, at -1 we have like a brick wall limiter, and then we push pretty heavy into that. We lean into that pretty hard. I think actually the compressor starts at -3. It's a really like a small compressor with a limiter on top of it, and basically that is and Mickey said office hours is broadcast at integrated loudness of around -18 LKFS with peaks around -3. So yeah, so that's it. And anyway, and then we kind of push into that, and that keeps people from complaining, but it also keeps it from peaking. Now, next question.
Next question comes from Francis Frey in Cambridge, Massachusetts, QR code. I teach a lot on Zoom, often to hundreds of people at a time. I'm able to record mine and in 4K. How might I record the rest of the video feed in the highest quality possible? I prefer not to record directly in Zoom.
Good, Samuel.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you're trying to record yourself. in 4K your end, because the zoom feed you won't be able to get in 4K. Of course, you can record a multi-view. For example, you set up a multi-view on a 4K screen and then a screen capture that. That could be one alternative. But if you're looking to record yourself, then I would try to record it before you go into Zoom. So split off your signal. Now, either in one of the software switchers like vMix or OBS or one of the other ones. And then you can do your recording in there and then send it into Zoom that way. Another way would be to do it in hardware with a hardware recorder and then pipe yourself into there. But you have to be able to, if you want to get the audio from your Zoom meeting, then you have to pipe that into your recording. So there's a few things you have to check. We'll post a link to a video of Aaron Perky. He was doing this. I'm sure your use case won't be exactly the same, but you might be able to get some tips and tricks from him.
Good, Ronnie.
Yeah, usually in the old days, we tend to just connect a Mac Mini or something into the Zoom meeting and have that connected to a Sonnet box with a Decklink Duo or something and just tap out the full 1080s. That is, of course, possible if you have the right type of account with Zoom. Nowadays, when Zoom announced their very, very powerful API being built into lots of the software vendors, we are actually able to do that in the software itself. And just an example, here I have Mimo Live set up, and in this Mimo Live, I just have the different sources and the different personal or screen shares or even spotlights or the automatic or active speaker. I have that set up, and on the right side here, I just have set up a lot of recorded files, which I then can point to each of the correct inputs, as you can see here. Just make sure you have the file naming conventions correct and hit record. And the latest test we did on Guy's, I think that's an M3 studio, if I'm not far from the truth. They did 12 or 13 parallel recordings in 1080, and they still had a lot of headroom available on the CPU and GPU. So Mimo Live is tapping into the Mac OS X operating system with really, really efficient processes and can do a lot of magical stuff doing these types of recordings. Mimo Live is currently in beta for a lot of more functionality tied directly into Zoom, so you can do a lot of automation also with the things that you are controlling or want to control in the Zoom room or Zoom meeting. And you can automate that and have that out on the web-based control surface that is also offered in Mimo Live. So we're using these things now, and I've actually tried to do this in parallel in a live show where we did the thing normally, and we did this in parallel. It's really, really amazing technology. So look into that if you're having problems recording Zoom. The other thing that Samuel said was to do the recording before it enters into Zoom. And of course, if you have the kits you can send out with recorders and connect that to the camera before you send that into the Zoom room, that would also be an option. But there are not enough details in your question to actually find out how to do this best for you.
Yeah, let us know, Francis, what exact feeds you're trying to record. You know, so you're recording. You said you can record in 4K, but are you trying to record your camera, the remote contributions, the Zoom itself? So let us know what all the pieces are that you're trying to record, and I'm sure we can find a way to do it for you. Next question.
Next up is from Abrera from Flowery Branch, asking, any portable monitor you recommend for my traveling Mac Mini?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, Unfortunately, I think I need a little bit more information as to what you're trying to do. If you're looking for a monitor, like I don't know, I always bring a set of headphones for my personal monitor, and always get something that's wired up. I never do Bluetooth in a production. If you're doing on stage or if you're doing roundtable, that's going to make a difference as to what type of system that you're going to use. Speakers, big or small. If it is on stage, a lot of the times, a lot of the events that I always do are at a place where they can supply a speaker. And so I just need a loudspeaker, and I can just bring in a mixer or something like that to patch into that. And that's usually what I do. I remember one time we actually did an event where we had active speakers, and they said, oh, we can't have live sound come through there. So people were passing by. They couldn't hear anything. So I ended up going to Walgreens and finding a little speakers like this, and then I have a multi-headphone out option that we plugged in, and then I set them just outside so there was enough sound that people could hear if they passed by, but not enough to annoy people for the conference. So it really depends on the situation.
Yeah, I think this is video monitors, though. So I think that the go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, I'm wondering also if it's a video monitor. My guess is that's what's true. It's what you can fit. What you can fit in your pack. There's many monitors out there that are easy to connect, and if they have a single connector, that's really nice. I like the U Perfect because they've got the double screen for a monitor, but that's if I'm carrying a monitor. I actually prefer carrying a tablet or multiple tablets because then it becomes a purpose-built device. When I'm traveling, if I'm carrying, I don't want something that does nothing when it's not connected. I'll have, in fact, when I was at NAB, I had 2 laptops and 4 tablets around me, and they were each had a different multi-view for my production when I was up in the press room at NAB. So having purpose-built devices, you're now offloading the requirement of the CPU on the device. Yep. But if you don't, then I'd use some of the UPerfect. They're great, and they have the folding ones now. So they have you can either do it landscape or portrait. So it's kind of neat.
Mickey recommends this. This is the Asus Pro Art PQ2020 UC. It's not available on Amazon right now. I'm sure it's available somewhere. But this looks like a great one here. It's got a little. It does its own little stand here. That's it's nice. The one that I have that's mounted right in front of me right now is this one. You can see I bought it back in Christmas time 2022. This one has a touch screen on it and folds up, and it also has a. It also has VESA mount, so I still don't buy monitors, even little thin ones, without VESA mounts. And so it has a VESA mount that I can plug into. So I can plug it into a VESA mount. I can fold it up and put it in my backpack. It can get video signal and control from the USB-C. So I just need a USB-C cable to plug it in, and it's touchscreen. If I'm using USB-C, it's all touchscreen, and I can do my thing. So it's pretty useful, and it's not $165. Next question.
Next question comes from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman from Boston, Massachusetts. In rural places, what options for backup internet might I not be thinking of? Starlink, Hughsnet, others?
Good. Samuel?
Yeah, well, I live in a quite rural place, and I don't have any fiber or anything like that. So what I have is a wireless ISP. But the challenge with that is that it's not the most stable connection, at least when you're doing WebRTC, like a low latency, because you get the jitters. It's almost like a Wi-Fi connection. So now I'm on cellular, and that works a lot better for the packets and with WebRTC specifically, and specifically if you're doing 1080p zoom. I haven't tried Starlink in my area here. So I know some people have had some issues with it, and it's not so extremely long since it was launched in Norway, but I haven't tested it yet myself.
I go, JJ.
So the precursor to Starlink was Globalstar. Globalstar, and I think it was called Orbital Science, was another company, but Globalstar is still around. They still have satellite devices. You can still use those as a connector, and I have connections to them. And Telefonica. Telefonica also has its own international distribution, but something that hasn't been used in a while is WiMAX. So WiMAX is also an option. Many many times will still have a dongle. You can attach the dongle to your device. In WiMAX, it's usually the 365 spectrum. It was very popular in Europe. I know other places where it's still very popular. You just stick a dongle in and can connect and provide a reliable connection that uses multipath wireless. So look for places, and I know that you sometimes travel to Europe. So WiMAX is a solution.
Yeah, and I think that if you're talking about a backup and you're traveling and you might be in a rural area, you might not be in a rural area, and you're moving around, you have a couple options. I think that a mixture of cellular and a Starlink are going to be kind of like, oh, I can do one of these things. The problem with bonding the two of them together, it's great for streaming. I find that Zoom connections are not great in that environment, or any WebRTC. The jitter that is inherent with bonding tends to not have, it tends to reorder the frames. So that's where you start to see some stability issues there. But a lot of times, having some kind of cellular, a lot of times I just have my cell phone as a bonding, and I'll pair it to the cell phone if I'm going to use it, or I have a Starlink, which I've used at my parents' house because they don't have much internet. They're pretty far out. So those are the and that's worked well. They went from having about 1 megasecond to having about 80 megs a second pretty quickly. But you do have to see a lot of the sky. So that's the challenge. Next question.
Next up is from JJ Mukana from San Rafael and on the panel, asking, Alex mentioned the study from 15 years ago regarding the psychology of presentations. Is it published somewhere?
I just said I didn't publish it. No, I haven't published it. I would have to redo it because I was hired to do it for somebody else, and so it's not something that I own that I could publish. And I feel like it's old enough that I can talk about it in public, but it's not. It was not something that is, and I don't think they cared. They just wanted to know what was happening. And I got to tell you, all of our content was made irrelevant at that point. I mean, it was called into question when we did the study. And so it was like, the reason I remember all the numbers is because it was very traumatic. Like, I literally almost stopped making content because I was like, everything I'm doing is wrong. It was just like the data came out and you're looking at it and it was so crystal clear that people weren't watching, this stuff. And then what happens is it's one of those things, like you see a movie and then suddenly you realize that the whole thing had been set up the whole time, like they've been setting this whole thing up. So as soon as you saw the data and then you rewind and then you start looking at all the events that you did, and the fact that even in a physical event, one of the big challenges in physical events, you do a giant event, there's 15,000 people in the room or 800 people in the room. You're shooting reverse shots, right? So you have your stage here, right? And then you have your camera. You usually have two cameras here. You have two wides. This is a very standard stage shot. There's sometimes we get 9 or 10 or 12 cameras, and then you have these reverse cameras. So oftentimes you'll have a couple reverse cameras, and they're there to get the audience, get the audience reactions and people nodding and people whatever, and so that's kind of what you have set up. These are the hardest cameras to run because everyone's looking down at their phone. People are falling asleep, especially like that keynote on the second day at 9 o'clock in the morning. And people are like, whoa, and so you're like, why did you even come? Anyway, but trying to get a wide shot, you'll notice when you see those reverse shots, a lot of those shots are really close. We're throwing right into that person. And the reason we're doing that oftentimes is because the person next to them is either looking at their phone, they're talking to somebody else, they're sleeping. These are all the things that happen, in a keynote. And it was like, once you saw that data and you looked at it, you're like, oh, no one's paying attention, and these long drawn out demos aren't working, they're not, they're not working. And so anyway, it's just, and that's why we started promoting the idea of, hey, you should put a video up and even just show people movies that you can, because a movie can be made much denser and you can put all this graphics and everything else into it. And it's easier to get people to watch that for a longer period of time. It's still hard if you're a corporation and you don't have a lot of really interesting things to look at. But, we were telling people for a decade before Apple started doing stuff during COVID that, keynotes are a waste of time. They're really a waste of time. They're a waste of money and they're a waste of time because you could do it so much better on a video and let people watch the video and then answer questions or talk about it or have conversations. But they're just a complete waste of money and time, And so and Apple figured that out by accident during. Apple came to that I think that might have been something that people have been thinking about for a while there, but I think that they came to the conclusion that, oh, right, let's do videos because they had to do it for COVID, and it's so much better now that they'll never go. I never is a big word. Maybe Apple will decide to do it, but I think they would only do it once because they'd realize how boring it is to watch a stage event now after you used to watching a movie. And so I think that that's going to be the hard part. And we have to remember that we made keynotes when we didn't have the kind of video tool, when we didn't have 4K, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have a way to distribute content. The keynotes were created because that's how you did that. It wasn't, we have to always keep on asking why. Why were we doing that? And we were doing it because you were there, and we could fill up a screen with graphics and everything else, and it was bigger than anything you could have at home, and that's not the case anymore. And so it just doesn't make any doesn't make any sense anymore. So anyway, we'll try to do more. We'll try to do another thing that we could. I've been thinking about getting these. Nobe is the company that we use for the eye tracking. TOBII. The ones that we had back then were like $20,000 units. Now they're like $500 units. I think you can get them on your phone practically. So those are the eye trackers that we used for this process. And we should do it again. It was expensive because it was a couple hundred people. You can't have data without a couple hundred people. We have a couple hundred people, but it's so we might be able to do it. We did it in an environment. Like people came in, they sat, all that stuff. So. Anyway, we haven't published it. We won't publish it because it wasn't ours, but to publish. But we will try to do a study again, maybe. I'm not a big, when you do production, when you do hundreds or thousands of events, you're kind of like, okay, well, we know how that works. And we've done this. And so we're probably less study oriented than most people. I have a pretty low value on academic studies, mostly because the process of studying it, even in this case, the process of studying it damages the result. So and so you just, and oftentimes people have some opinion that they're just trying to prove. About 80-90% of them are just, I have an opinion about this, and now I'm going to give you a bunch of data. Like the Stanford Zoom study was just the most worthless. It's actually what unraveled my belief system in studies was that one study, because they talked about something I knew so well, and they were so full of things I can't talk about on the show. Next question.
Next question comes from Douglas Carmichael. Is there any longevity benefit to using the power save mode feature of my Yamaha DM3 console to dim the console's display after a set period?
Running.
Normally, a temperature is increased as in the same way you increase the light. And I tend to think that if you're not using the gadget or mixer or whatever, you should always try to save the temperature from impacting the longevity. If this is the case for the Yamahas, I'm not sure. They are normally pretty high quality. It could be maybe a burn-in problem, but I don't think these displays on these consoles actually have that problem. So I would say, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah, Mickey said that with the options limited to a range of 30 seconds to 15 minutes, he doesn't see a use case. I don't need the screen to dim during the show, which is true. Jeff Keithley said, nope, turn it on and let it burn. Mickey said 100%, and I would agree with all of those things. I don't want my screens to change during an event. If you don't want it to burn in or you're afraid it's going to be on too long, turn it off. You can turn it off. But otherwise, when it's on, in my opinion. Next question.
Next up comes from Jeff Keithley of Pizzazz. Appreciate all the private messages about Friday's cloud production update. Is there anything anyone wants to see more of?
Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, I enjoyed yesterday's show. What I've just done, like basic cloud production, like with setup vMix and running in SRT feeds. But what I'm kind of interested in is like how you set up the ecosystem with the redundancy and several instances, and like how you route the SRT signals, because I know you use a Nimble Streamer. So perhaps if we could do something sometime on Nimble Streamer, for example, and how you route the signals and bounce the signals back and forth, that would be well interesting in my opinion.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, being into this for a few years and of course chatting with both Jeff and others about this, Jeff, I don't think I should answer for anyone else than me and myself. But yes, please. We just have to find out how to do it. If we're going to do that in second hours, a lot of second hours, because the subject here is very, very broad, as Samuel also mentioned. Maybe after hours, or maybe just put up a room and be there all the time, because this is needed.
JJ?
I'd also look at some of the remote solutions we used. So we've used recently the Eclipse production, how we did that, what kinds of VPNs are functional. I know that Mickey and Jeremy have been using, what is it called? It's a Tailscale. Thank you. Have been using Tailscale to do remote productions, and how do you do Belfast or Todd Reynolds, these experiments? Which kind of VPNs are more robust? What their backends are, zero tier versus Radmin versus OpenVPN, direct solutions. So maybe, doing some of those tests. And then I know that Jeff and I are probably going to do a test on a lot more of the NDI bridge functions on Tuesday. So that's another one, showing folks how the flexibility and scalability of using these multi-location solutions are.
Next question.
Next up comes from David Brady from New York, New York. I have a Zoom room and a Nobe Omni scope. What would be the easiest way to leverage the two as an always available set of scopes for meetings? And what would be the most useful ones to have available?
It'd be really fun to play with this as far as Nobe Omniscope. The main thing is you have to take Zoom ISO and be able to route it out so that you can send something out. I probably would do active speaker out to Zoom ISO and then deliver that as a, in Siphon or whatever to an Omniscope. I've never tried to do Siphon to Omniscope, but I would try to do that so that I could just look at the active speaker and see what their levels are in that area. That's probably the way I would do that on a Mac. So I think that'd be my approach. Go with running.
Can you directly from Zoom create a Siphon, or do you have to go through something?
No, I think you need Zoom ISO to do that. So I would use Zoom ISO and do that. So you just have that active speaker pumping out. Yeah. Next question.
Talalak Lopez Waterman from Boston asks, what's the best way to add your location in Mukana? Flags on the graphics look great.
Go ahead, JJ.
Configure your Mukana. So inside of Mukana there is, sorry if I'm slow on this, cut.
Just make sure to use the user view, not the. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, using your correct name. So, sorry, in the name settings in Mukana, I was trying to cut to it quickly. Mm-hmm. It'll show you location. So mine is Santa Fe, California, US as the location. But it's also now that I just looked right at the interface, there's a country. So you can specify underneath that in Mukana, specify your country, and that will allow us with the new. This is the new patch we have today, right?
Yeah, so a new patch. We've done some. We did some updates to Mukana. We did some updates to the patch that looks at it. And one of the things we've been really, I know it seems like a little thing, but we really want everybody's flags to be accurate. So make sure that you go into Mukana. If you're in Mukana, go in there and set your country correctly so that you can do that. All right, next question.
Next up is from Camille Birkenstein from Haarlem, the Netherlands. With the launch of the Blackmagic Constellation 2ME 4K, can we also expect a cheaper 4K in the Atem Extreme ISO SDI? This is a QR code question.
Go ahead, Samuel.
Maybe. But given the price range these are in and the use case that they're intended for, then I think there's a lot of people that would want it, but I don't know how useful it would be to have it. Of course, there's a lot of use cases, but how much it's needed. One thing I thought was very interesting that on the show after the Blackmagic launch, then there was a lot of discussion about the products announced, and I wasn't announced once the Blackmagic 4K switchers. So I think in some use cases maybe.
I don't think it's going to happen. like it just doesn't make sense it's not the use case for this switcher. So I wouldn't say that you'd be skating in hell if it happened, but I would say that it is very unlikely. Next question.
Next up is from Rumslag from Tatooine. Isn't that you? I was heading to a pod race with my friend, but he was rotoscoped out of the picture. Why do you think someone would do that? Happy May the 4th.
So the backstory here is I am Rumslag, and I was in a green screen. Basically, someone came in. I think actually John Knoll came in to where we were working and said, "You and you and you come with me." And then they just put me in a scuba suit that's painted orange and put a utility belt on and gave me a mask and a backpack. And I went out there, and the other person that was next to me was another visual effects artist named Jonathan Rothbart. And Rothbart was next to me, but his face was too visual, and that's why they wrote him out. Like, it was just too clear. I survived that extra because I had a mask on. And so anyway, but I do have a dream of doing a whole like Mandalorian for Rumslag, but I think he should be I think it should be like Inspector Clouseau or something. Like he's kind of a overweight alcoholic that just kind of happens to find he's trying to find people. He's like a Boba Fett, but he drinks too much and he's a little like crazy, and he just happens to find the person all the time. So I think that'd be perfect for Rumslag. Anyway, next question.
I think you should dress up as Rumslag and do office hours that way. Next up comes from Lucas from Montclair, New Jersey. What's a good general backup strategy for a small one-person video editor? I assume a local backup and possibly NAS or cloud backup. Any software to automate it? And it's also a QR code question.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, there are so many ways to do this, but make sure you have more than 3 copies or at least 3 copies, because one is not a backup. 2 is almost a backup. One way that we do it, and we do it several ways, but one of the workflows we have is when we ingest everything from the SSD or SD cards or whatever, we let the original copy be on the card until we have the first version in the NAS. And then we have replication going on each night onto a separately external connected docking, where we actually just insert old plain cold storage drives, big 18 terabyte drives that are being removed from the facility. In addition, the NAS, this is a Synology, I think, they have their own nightly or every 4 hours schedule set up to synchronize out to our external backup sites. This is Dropbox and S3 storage from AWS. So there are so many ways to do it, but if you buy a pretty cheap NAS like Synology or similar, they normally have software inside them to set up that kind of external replication.
Next question.
Next up is from Omar Gadin, and he asks, what is the cleanest way to get a PowerPoint presentation from a single laptop where the slideshow is presented to a room for IMAG and the presenter view goes to the confidence monitor, screen mirroring, and extended display?
I think it's Omar Gadin, I believe.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Samuel.
Yeah, the way I would do it is, I assume it's a Windows laptop. So what I would do HDMI out of the laptop and then put it in extended mode. So you have your presentation view on the laptop screen, and then you send it to the system. And you have to, depending on what kind of system they have, if you have HDMI or SDI, you have to convert it perhaps to what they have in the venue.
Next question.
Next up is from Matt Cool from Montreal, California. My wife and I are about to remodel our kitchen. What tech should you incorporate into the design, if any?
I'll go with JJ.
A coffee machine. For us, a built-in espresso maker saved us so many trips to Starbucks.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is that what I would say, a coffee machine, I have a Breville that's a pretty nice little cappuccino machine. It's not like an incredibly nice one, but a reasonably good one. I think it cost me $800 or something like that. But it saves me so much money. Like I make my wife lattes, I make a lot of those things. And it just does all the things that it needs to do, and I would highly recommend it. The other technology is a rice cooker. I have a Zarishi rice cooker. I have a June. You can't buy Junes anymore. I use it every single day for those things. A Cuisinart. I make cashew butter with it often. Well, go ahead,
but for
Jay. Real quick, we're going to transition here in a second.
Yeah, since they're doing the. Oh, okay.
Well, you know what?
Mila.
Just hold this thought. We'll continue. I said I was going to only do 1 hour, but there's a couple of questions. We might as well finish them off. So we're going to do the transition. I'm not going to do any announcements, but we're just going to say, hold this thought, and I'm going to talk slow enough until we get to 57 seconds, and then we'll transition right now. Okay, what were you going to say, JJ?
So he said a remodel of his kitchen. All those things you can add in.
That's true.
But the Mila, it was $5,000 for the Mila, and it paid for itself in 6 months. So a coffee machine, I promise you.
The main thing that I would say is that lighting, like location lighting around underneath the things, is really, really powerful. Like, it's just really nice to have it there. And then being able to have, think about what kind of stove you want. So there's my dream. I haven't done this, but my dream is to have a Heston stovetop, because the Hestons, these are the smart stovetops. They sync with your phone. So basically what happens is it's an induction stovetop that the pans have a Bluetooth in the pan, and the pan will talk to your phone and tell it how hot it is, and the phone will talk to the stove and tell it what to do. And what that means is you say, I want 300 degrees. It takes it to 300 degrees and stops. And when you add stuff into it, you add some cold eggs or whatever, the temperature of the pan goes down and immediately moves it right back up to where it was. So if you say, I want it to be at 325, it doesn't slowly swing this way and slowly swing that way. It just goes right back to 325. And so when it comes to precision, I have a stove top for it, just like a little single pan inducted heater that is great. But man, they have a stove top, and I don't know how successful it is. I don't even know if it still exists, but I know that when I talk to them, I've been, someday when I win the lottery or something, it's not that expensive, but I don't have any excuse to get rid of the one that I have. That's the problem. But you have a bunch of burners, and then they have these great little how-tos on how to build stuff. I know that people, this is like we talk about not talking about religion, but I'm going to mention some religious comments right now, is that you hear it back up. Here we go. JJ's bracing for impact here. You don't need a gas stove. I know. I just said that. And people, it's like, JJ's upset. He may leave. We may lose. You don't need a gas stove. And the inductant heating is so much more precise. And so the electric stove, I have found that I can cook a lot of good things on an electric stove. I kind of wish I had a gas stove at times, but I will say that I just I don't need it as much as I thought I did. I had a gas stove up until I moved into the house that I'm in now. Always. Or I had some electric, those little electric circle ones. I have right now, what I have is a halogen, halogen head end. So it's really hot lights. so anyway, talk about hot lights. So anyway, but that has been, I found that I can do what I need to do with it. It doesn't heat up quite as fast, and you have to get good at taking things off burners. You can't just turn them off. So to me, that's the big downside of it. But yeah, go ahead. And you can't, when the power goes out and you don't have any matches, you don't have something that's easy just to turn on to light something else, to light your candles. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, okay, so start with the most advanced thing. You need an extra small room right outside your kitchen where you can put your Traeger, so the grill, or something else, because grills are really an important tech, old tech, but it's still a good tech to use in the kitchen. The other thing that has been mentioned already is mood lighting, using a lot of LED lights hidden underneath the cabinets or underneath at the floor level, etc. And you, of course, need to be able to change those into different type of moods. Speakers, not TVs. TVs is kind of 80s, so drop the TV. Have a lot of desk space so that you can put equipment that you actually are going to change a lot more often that you change your kitchen. And there was one in the chat here, Thermomix was mentioned by Ross McNulty. Thermomix is a really, really cool gadget. Get one of those. And don't forget the air fryer. If you buy our air fryer and start to make things in the air fryer, you will never stop using it. So just have a couple in reserve in case the first one you use is going, out of order. And make sure you have a backup.
Good, JJ.
So Mickey asked earlier what else I've been up to. And one of the things, one of my coworkers asked me when I started working with him, hey, JJ, can we put together a studio in my kitchen? So if you decide that you want a studio in your kitchen, make sure you have enough outlets in the correct locations. And this kitchen has the Heston stove. It was only $3,000, Alex. And I would agree that having the Heston and the Bluetooth produces amazing meals. And my coworker, he's got a channel, it's 900 recipes. He wants to call it 900 recipes. I'm calling it the Selfish Chef because he makes all this delicious food and no one gets to eat it. Here's a shot of that kitchen. So you can see one of the Insta360s. We're looking through one of the...
and that's one of the Heston. That's the Heston.
Yeah, the Heston's on the left. And you can see this gorgeous kitchen. So this Michael Capristo, he is making his own channel. And so for him, we built this little studio inside of it. And we put kitchen. You can see in the kitchen the mood lighting. He replaced that as lighting in the ceiling so you get just the right temperature, color temperature. And it was all $3,000 for the studio build and then $3,000 for the Heston.
And the Heston, by the way, it comes with all these tutorials. It's amazing. And they're like step by step. You can just kind of work through it. What is the, Mickey, if you're watching, what is the, I can't do it because my ceiling is like 20 feet higher than my island, so I can't do it in my house. But I've often thought that I want to use that little T-track. We were talking about mounting into instead of speed rail. There's like a T-track that I just can't think of the name of right now. But it's like a little, and I've seen it in some studios where it's low profile, so it really just looks like it looks like elements in the ceiling, but it's but what you can do is you can put stuff into it and turn it, and it's in and so you can mount lights to the ceiling. But if you take all the lights out, it would you don't see it at all. I mean, it just looks like elements again, and you can there's even like little pads that you can put on it, so you can like push stuff into it, so it just looks like it's now part of the ceiling. T-slot, that's a T-slot track is what James is saying. I think that's what it is there. And so anyway, so think about that if you have a lower ceiling, because you can put cameras, you can put lights, you can do all those things and mount those things into it and then take them out when you're having guests that you don't want to use if you want to actually shoot something from there. I do think that there is with inflation here in the United States and the cost of stuff, I think that cooking shows we started playing with this years ago, and because I thought that this would become a thing, and I think it's about to become a thing, which is that people are going to be looking. It is so inexpensive to cook at home, it is like when I look at, I make my own flour tortillas, for whatever I'm cooking. I don't think about buying flour tortillas because once you know how to make them, it's absurd. Like they cost they cost 2 pennies each to make, and they taste 10 times better. And it takes 10 minutes. Like 10 minutes. From the time I decide, I'd like some flour tortillas to the time I have cooked flour tortillas is about 10 minutes. So it's just, it is flour, salt, water. That's it. You can put a little sugar in if you want. You put a little olive oil if you want, but that's it. And you just mix it all together. You don't have to wait for it to rise. You just sit there and mix it all together while you're listening to the music, and then you roll it out real thin, and then you throw it on a pan that you don't even put anything in. You just throw it on the pan, let it get it hot. As soon as it gets bubbly, you flip it over, let it burn a little bit so it's got a little crisp to it. And boy, and so the thing is that, and I've gotten to the point now where and I do have a point to this, which is that, I think you're making Matt, you're making the right decision. I think people should upgrade their kitchens, and I think that we should be thinking about doing more streaming, because I think that the demand for this, as the cost of going out keeps on going up. I can tell you, as someone who's really focused on cooking from scratch, which means I do what we call single ingredient cooking, which is that everything that I buy at the store has one ingredient. Now, it's not that that's the only thing I eat. Like, I'm going to eat lettuce today, but it means that so 90% to 95%. It was like 60% a couple of years ago. It's now 95%. Everything I eat comes from starts with a group of single ingredients, and then I make it so it's really from scratch, and I've learned to make those things. And I've gotten to the point, like, I now make. We did this thing with Jacques Pepin. So we were studying it, and I started to watch how he made omelets. And it took me a couple weeks of making omelets to get to a point where I'm not making them as good as he is, but I'm now making them so well that I could not eat them at a restaurant. Like, I can't. It's not worth it. Like, unless I'm going to spend $30 on a plate, I am not going to eat an omelet at somebody else's restaurant, because mine is perfect for me. So the thing, and I make one every morning now. That's my little morning thing, and so I highly recommend it. But I think that we are going to go back into that sometime, hopefully over the summer or the fall, where we start digging more into it. And I will tell you that, like, the time we spent with Damianti doing them, the Mad in the Kitchen was a lot of fun. The Damianti sessions really had us learn a skill set, that I use every single day. Like, I just learned how to use spices. I learned how easy it was to use a lot of the spices that I was using. There was a lot of things I hadn't thought about that when we were doing it. And what's funny is that 3 years after doing those cooking sessions with Damianti, I'm almost completely vegetarian. Not totally, but 90%, 95% vegetarian, because I learned how to cook vegetables with Damianti. And so from her book and from her sessions. And so, and I just learned that it could be really good. And I learned that I didn't need meat to make the meal complete. Like, yesterday yesterday dinner was like a bunch of potatoes and some garlic and some onions and some olive oil and some salt and pepper. And it was put into the June for 35 minutes. It came out and it was amazing. And that's what we ate. Like, we thought about adding more things, but it turned out we were like, okay, we're full. So that's the, and so I think that you really, I highly recommend for people watching, sorry, I just screwed up our question thing. I highly recommend for people watching to think about cooking if you're not cooking right now, because it's very cost effective if you stop buying processed things. So if you buy unprocessed things, you can buy really high quality versions of that stuff. Like, for instance, also find your fish market, because the fish market has the rice. Do not buy less than 25 pounds of rice at a time. Like, that is cray. So, like, that's your little tip for the day. You're paying like somewhere between 5 and 10 times what rice costs if you buy a 25-pound sack or a 50-pound sack of rice. So go out and buy. Same thing with flour. All those elements, things you're going to use all day, every day. Stop with the white rice, by the way. It's like the glycemic impact is the same as sugar. It's the same as ice cream. But you can get brown, GABA brown rice. You can get 50 pounds for almost nothing. You can't even find it in a store, but you can go to a fish market and find a Berkeley fish market. You just stacks of them as you walk in the door, just big packs. So anyway, yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So getting back to the tech on that, first of all, my Heston, I always like to put it in the garage because then I can pre-cook stuff to put on the grill. But if you are talking about doing video, you can have a breakout box inside of a kitchen. And what I've seen is what they do is they take that breakout box, whether you're using SDI or HDMI, XLR and everything like that. If they have like a tile system, they can bring it into the wall and then take the tile and turn it into a door, put a seal around it because it's very important not to get grease collecting up into that breakout box. If you've got the stove on an island, you can always run a cable, HDMI or SDI cable, into the back of the island and, of course, hiding. And you also want to make sure that it is beyond the heat or have something that's going to protect the cable from the heat from the stove, so it could be on the other end of the island, so you can easily plug in a camera, so you can work from there. And then DMX lighting is what I would recommend for your lighting needs, especially if you're going from studio to kitchen to do any type of stuff.
And as a studio person, what I would say is that I just come in, if there's any way while you're remodeling this that you can rebuild that ceiling with the T-track or other things, put all your gear up there, like all your cabling, everything else, just get it all up there so that you can come down. I would do that with mine. If I ever have my own like man cave again, I used to have one a long time ago, I would absolutely in Petaluma, when I lived in Petaluma, there was a in-law house, and I lived in the in-law house was my space. So it's the only way I miss it. Anyway, so definitely think about putting your wiring, exactly what Jeffrey's talking about, the fiber. And, if I built any house now, I would be thinking about a server room somewhere. I have a server room in my house. I didn't make it. It was just here when I got here. But, and it's got all this, Cat 6 going back to it right now. I would put TAC 12 into every room, so I don't have to think about where I'm going to move video or audio or anything else. It's not, the cable now is not that expensive. It's the running it. So if you run it and you give yourself large conduit, you can run it into every room compared to the cost of your house. It's a very small number. And then you never have to think about it again. You're future proof for your lifetime with TAC 12. Go ahead, JJ.
I realized one more thing that you need for Christmas is the tortilla press. I didn't hear that in your list.
I have one, yeah. No, but I have a couple of them for the corn press. I don't use the presses I just use a roller for my flour tortillas. But I do have a corn press.
Fast.
The corn. Do you use a press for the flour ones as well?
Mm-hmm.
I should try.
Well, I use it for that, and also there's something called a mjod cake. It's a honey cake that I make for my wife, and I use the press for that. She was really annoyed that I was mixing her culture's recipes with my culture's methodologies. Like, sorry,
if you really want to go down a path, is that I'll make a whole bunch of corn tortillas, and then I'll cook them up, and then I'll cut them up, and then I'll make them into chips. And I got to tell you, they are like, people are like, where did you get these chips? But it takes a little bit. It's like an afternoon of listening to books to do it. But you can make a bag of chips that is the best chips anyone's ever had. Again, when you start making stuff at home, and I know we've gone off a little bit, but it's a Saturday and we're not, we don't have a lot, we have time. But if you, what I will say that again is one of the most important things. I think that it's a real, like, we mostly go to school to learn things that we'll never remember again. Like by the time you're 25, you've forgotten almost everything you learned in grade school. And we don't get taught the things that matter, like how to build things, how to fix things, how to program, how to cook, how to do those things. That's what you really want to walk away with, because you'll use that every day forever. Anyway, so it's just crazy. Next question.
Next question comes from Tlalek Lopez Waterman from Boston. With spinning disk hard drives, can they be used horizontally or vertically without issue?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yes, modern drives, and that is the last 20 years at least, since I've seen something that specify that has to be used horizontally or vertically only. So the answer is yes, you can use them both ways. Remember just to power them down, and don't ever move them while they are spinning.
Good, Jeffrey.
Technology has gotten a lot better, so if it's an older hard drive, I would probably keep them horizontal. Upside, don't put them upside down. They are not meant to do that. You're going to lose your data as quick as possible. So, but of course, newer drives, they work horizontally or vertically pretty easy.
Yeah, we've been using them vertically and horizontally, but not upside down for maybe the last 15 years without any trouble. Next question.
Next question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next question is, I'm going to take over reading because Jeffrey's got to go. Okay. Next question is from Paul Wall, who's from Hot Springs, Arkansas. And Paul asks, SamMobile says that the next Galaxy Unpacked event will take place on July 10th, 2024. What do you hope for in terms of AI, foldables, S25 features, and cameras and rings and watches? I don't know. I don't really track those very much. I'm an Apple user, so I think that I'd love to see more resolution, and it would be good. The S24 has a really good camera. The way that it processes video is a little challenging, so it'd be great if they started thinking about supporting some standard mezzanine level video like the iPhone 15. So I think that's the challenge for Samsung, is to support, whether it's some kind of the Avid formats or Apple ProRes or other things like that. I think that the real challenge for them is to start incorporating mezzanine formats into it, being able to record proper log, being able to do all those things. The current S24 has a great camera, but no way to record great video. Next question is from Pedro Gonzalez. I'll get it. In Oklahoma City. Pedro asks, what is your favorite Star Wars movie or series? May the 4th be with you. May the 4th be with you. We didn't even mention that, but this is the 4th. You can actually see episode 1 right now. Is this weekend, I believe, and today. You can go see episode 1 in a lot of theaters. There's a re-release going on, I think, in AMC and IMAX and a couple other ones. So definitely check that out. I worked on that film. I didn't do the film. I did that film. I worked on the film in previs, and I did. If you see a big shiny ship in space, I probably worked on that shot. In fact, I probably did most of the shot. I didn't model the Queen ship, but most of the texturing and lighting and stuff like that I worked on. And then the pod race and space battle, I did a lot of previs for. So it's great. It's fun to see it back in the theater, and so I recommend going out and checking it out. My favorite is actually Andor. I think I've enjoyed Andor more than almost any other. Andor and Mandalorian are the two things that the first season of Mandalorian and Andor, I think I've enjoyed the most. Next question is from Paul Walhus in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Paul asks, what's the latest technology for creating a home studio LED wall with modular LED panels for micro-LED displays, low end and high end? I don't know if there's any low end. If you're talking about modular LED walls, you're talking about money. And if you're not going to put money into it, don't bother. Just get a big screen. So, but think about, it's a lot. Like if you want an 85-inch screen TV worth of a really good, modular LED, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars. so I wouldn't recommend it. So I would stick with big screens. Next question is from Pedro Gonzalez in Oklahoma City. And Pedro asks, what do you do when the client can't meet your price but offers you goods to help fill the gap? Offers you goods. It depends on the client. So there are different things you can get out of an event. Out of a project. Sometimes it is money, and that's most of the time, and you have to have enough of it to come in. And then sometimes it is it's positioning yourself, it's building a relationship, it's doing like we did an event for a big camera company, and I did it for free for cameras. I did it, but it fit into the model that I had. I already owned all the gear. Everybody that I had working on it were employees. They were all, and we made a swap, for it. And it was a very expensive, like $60,000 camera. So it was, so I made some swaps there because I wanted the camera and I wanted to get in there, and I didn't have the cash, but I did have spare energy, So you want to look at, where does it fit into what you're doing? This is years and years ago, a decade ago. You want to think about what you're getting out of it. There are things that I do for free. We all work on this show for free. So there are things that we do for free. There are things that we do for pay. There are things we do for somewhere in between or trade. You just want to make sure you're extracting value for yourself. So if they're offering you, like my dad one time defended somebody who couldn't pay him. So we ended up a pinball machine. So it was, so we had it down in the, he traded. My dad was fine. We're in the country. There's a lot of horse trading going on. And we ended up with a pinball machine. We ended up with a whole pond because someone owed my dad money. So anyway, like I had a 3-acre pond in the back of my house because someone owed my dad some money. And he was willing to trade it. And man, that was a great value. So don't, I wouldn't be constrained by cash only when it comes to things like, oh, I have to make this certain amount of money. People get into that mindset, and it's really painful. It really limits what you can do. So anyway, so think about that. But it just, if it fills the gap for you as well as it fills the gap for them, then it's worth it. What are we hiding? JJ asked, what are we hiding in the pond? I always, from the time I was a kid, I always wanted to put I wanted to build a pond and build an underwater house, like with tons and tons of windows before the pond filled up, and then put a little house on the top where the top would be, like a little house there. And then, but also like the underwater part would have like a pathway, like an underwater place where you could walk from the edge of the pond, go into a thing and walk along it. It would all be glass all the way there. And then you could go in and there'd be like, a big old house that's all underwater, and it has all this really thick glass, and you could see the fishies and all the other things there. And you could go out diving from the underwater. I thought that would be a great lair, but you'd have a regular house. Then you have this little house that looks like a little shop or something like that. It looks like it's an island, and then let the water fill up. And then I thought I could hire my kids. This is when I was a kid, but I was like, then I'll hire my kids to clean the glass, and it'll all be great. Like that'll be their farm chores would be to clean the glass with scuba gear. I thought that would be great. Anyway, that's what we're talking about. Next question is from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Boston, Massachusetts. And Tlaloc asks, JJ, have you seen any operas lately? JJ?
I did. Florencia in Amazonas. Tlaloc was the lighting designer for this production. It was pretty, it was brilliant. It is a Spanish language opera. If those of you who also have heard La Misa Criolla, it's in that close to the same genre. I noticed that a lot of from my point of view, the harps were brilliant, the harp parts, and it turns out because the director, his wife was a harpist. So it's playing in San Jose. I hung out with Andy Carluccio when I was there briefly, and most importantly, got to hang out with Tlaloc, so it was pretty great.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and Paul asks, what are the costs and results of using a third-party video editing service like vidpros.com, etc.? No idea. I've never done that. I've never sent an edit to a service to be edited. I always send it to an editor to be done. So I don't know. Sorry. Next question is from Eric Hertz in Hartford, Connecticut. And Eric asks, SociallyU pulled off an event that included Q&A via live video. Too risky or the next big thing? Now, go ahead, Ronnie.
We are probably going to do that. Yes, it's the next big thing, if you ask me.
I've done it a lot. I've done it for thousands of people to do Q&A live. It's not, the way I do it is not nearly, it seems like it's live. So I don't know what they did. It seems like it's live, but it's not live. It's live. It is live, but every person, so we did this for, Google Hangouts and did a lot of these other things but the people who happened to make the phone call or happened to be there, we had tested their internet. We had figured out, we had worked with them on their cameras. We had figured out their background. We had we call them the day before. We check in. We have them check in via video an hour and a half before. We have them come 20 minutes before and sit there and wait for us to be part of it. That's what the hit looks like. It doesn't look like, and if you think that's, I think the mistake is sometimes people think that things, because they look like they're easy, think that they actually are easy. And, like for instance, it was an eye opener when I don't know why I thought that Car Talk was people just calling in with their problems and asking questions and everything else. And those guys were just like, boom, boom, boom. They knew the answers every single time until I was talking to someone that was near to the show and found out that, people write their questions in and then a producer calls them and talks to them about it. And then they have meetings about it and they look at it and then they talk to the manufacturer. And then they have all this, there's all this stuff that happens for weeks, sometimes months before that person. Now, that person is live talking to them on the call, but that isn't what happened, right? And when they sound like they know all those things, it's because there's a lot of preparation that made that sound very fluid and easy. So what we do with live calls is we generally, there's only been a handful of times that we've actually taken live callers that weren't pre-prepped, and we paid for it almost every time. So basically pre-prepping people and then going, hey, we got a call in from this person, and almost every call-in show is like that. Just so you know, like it's not like that's not the Car Talk thing or our thing. That's how broadcast works. So you'll think, oh, that's the case, but no one takes actual live folks unless they are unless they're a known quantity. Like we could do that here because we would know our community is so well wound. We could grab onto that and, we could grab onto people here because we know them and we know that they'd probably be appropriate within a community. So there's definitely ways to say that we're going to take something like a random access person. I personally think the thing that works better is to take video questions. So ask people to post questions via video, and then you get them all. We did this, I think the first time I did it with video questions, we did something with the White House with Barack Obama, where if you go back to 2012, it's probably on the internet somewhere, but he's answering questions, and it was mostly live with people over Hangouts, but you see a couple of questions that were put in. There was like 3 or 4 questions that we used that were asked, and they were real questions from real people. We didn't have to pre-coach them. But we got thousands of them, and we picked the ones that were the best. And when I say the best, they held their camera. They put their camera on a tripod, or it was very steady. They were succinct. They were like all the things that were needed. So you can also do it that way, where you what we call both with guests. Like when we do guests, we would do what we call persane guest acquisition. Persane is it's when you fish for tuna. You throw what we call a fad into the water, and it's a floating attraction device. It's like junk floating in the middle of the ocean. It turns out if you throw a pile of junk that can float, you'll end up with a bunch of little fish, then a bigger fish, and then tuna. And then you run a net around it, and you pull everything in, and you hope not to have too much bycatch, which are the sharks and the whales and the dolphins and everything else. And you get a bunch of tuna, and then you try to carefully put the other stuff back as best you can. And then you call it a day. And so what we did with guests is we did persane, which is that we would say, hey, we're doing this event with this basketball player. If you're a fan, fill out this form. They'd fill out a form. We'd get 1,000 people. And then we were able to kind of carefully choose. We'd ask a bunch of questions. And we'd look for all the components we wanted from people for diversity and so on and so forth. And then you find all the folks, and then you put them all together, and then you check them all out. And if they're not crazy, you put them on the show. But that's there's a lot of different ways to do it. But when you see something like that feels like it's normal, some people actually go out and do it, but it won't take you very many events to regret doing like live. I don't know this person, I'm going to bring them in over video. We've had people come on that, we had to jump out of the video pretty quickly because we were going to be in trouble. Next question is from Pedro Gonzalez in Oklahoma City. And Pedro says, when is Apple going to come out with an M3 Mac Mini? What are they waiting for? It's probably the right cycle. So I think that the 2 cycles that the Mac Mini, Apple has cycles for their announcements. So you have iPads in the spring, which we're about to have next week. You have Pro devices, which the Mac Mini sometimes fits into, which would be in WWDC. You have the phone in the fall, and then you have oftentimes desktops and sometimes laptops in the winter, so the November, December. So those are the main ones. They may do other little announcements, but those are the main announcements that happen. They've happened that way for quite some time. So the 2 Mac Mini windows typically would be June and December, November, December. So if you see it in June at the WWDC, then woo! Now they have announced Mac Minis at iPad events. So it is not impossible that there'd be a Mac Mini as a one more thing at the event on Tuesday, because they've done it in the past, but it's not part of their more recent pattern. So we'll see what happens there. I think that the hard part with the Mac Mini is I think also part of it is that you have, I don't think that the M3s are out for the Pro. The weird thing right now is I think Apple's completely backwards on this. Is they're releasing the lower end stuff in M3s without releasing the high end in M3s, and it creates a lot of confusion and weird. To have the Studio and the Pro not getting the biggest chips first is weird. in my opinion. Like they should be getting the highest end chips first. And for whatever reason, Apple is not doing that. I expect to see a new studio, and I expect to see the M3 Studio and Pro be announced at WWDC. I have no information about that. I just expect that's what I'm expecting. So I expect to see those, and the Mac Mini may get rolled into that. So I think that there's probably a 70% chance that by June 15th, you'll see an M3, and there's a 30% chance if you don't, you'll see it. That other 30% will sit in December. So not a good time to buy computers right now from Apple. Next question is from Brian Stark in Nottingham. Brian asks, I am using NDI HX Capture app to send iPad screen to macOS. All apps continue to work on the iPad except Apple Music, which loses sound. Any ideas?
DRM.
DRM. It's definitely DRM. Like we're not guessing. We don't. We have ideas, and these ideas are fairly certain that it's DRM. Yes. So go ahead, JJ.
Well, and I've run into this with DisplayPort on IBM computers, IBM clones. So DisplayPort into the Magewell, which are great. Like if you're on a production, you're using NDI, carry a couple of these in your pocket. The Magewell converters, taking either Comcast directly out of a Comcast box will transmit nothing. Even using the EDID mirroring tools that exist inside there. Yeah. So it's DRM. Like you are without hope if you're trying to use anything that has very robust DRM.
I will say that Apple has gotten exceptionally good at DRM. And so for instance, even with, it used to be that I could do screen captures at least of YouTube TV. That's gone. Like, the newest versions will not let you do that. So I still can do, well, I'm not going to say it on the show. so I have ways of copying and capturing stuff. But because I use it for reference when we do it on the show and we're talking about graphics or we're talking about other things like that, I'll do it for that. And so I am doing it inside of what I would consider a legal, like it's for educational purposes and so on and so forth. So, I always want to say educational porpoises, and I always think of like a porpoise with like a little hat and like at a podium, So anyway, but those would be educational porpoises as opposed to purposes. Anyway, I think you're just running up against DRM there. All right. Excellent. Thank you to our excellent panelists for being here on a Saturday and having this great conversation. It was great to have you. It was great to have all of you here. We only usually see Ronnie and Samuel here on Saturdays, and we never see JJ. So hopefully JJ now is going to get into a pattern. JJ Saturdays here. You can join. So it was really, really great conversation with the panelists here today. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end where JJ usually is and probably still is while we're talking. But thank you to the incredible back end team who makes this possible every single day. There's people trying to figure out what we're going to talk about. There's people who are putting together the software and the hardware. There's people who are doing the show and making it actually happen. And we just really appreciate your contribution. And thanks to the producers, of course, who asked all the questions and asked so many. I'm threatening when we do Q&A to shorten it to an hour, but just make it a 1 hour show. That's what it used to be. For those of you who haven't been here for a while, it used to be 1 hour, and then we added 2 hours so that we could interview people, and then somehow we decided we'll just do Q&A for 2 hours. I was like, we can just go back to doing 1 hour of Q&A and do it. And I was going to do that today, but there were too many questions, and there were too many good ones and I was like, we can just talk to these and it'll be fine. So that's how we did it. But what I think we are going to move when we don't have a second hour, I think we are going to move to 1 hour of Q&A. So I think that's our next thing. So anyway, we'll see. All right. Today we traveled. If we had walked around and answered all these questions and just walked around as a group, just think of us like a little village walking around from person to person. Hey, can you have a question? Out there in Nottingham, and then down in wherever the other in the Philippines, because Mickey asked a question. If we had done that, we would have traveled 67,000 miles. That's 108,000 kilometers, and that is 529 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. A lot of rain, JJ. So much.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really good.
Are you enjoying any of it, perhaps?
Yeah, I can't hear it as well as I can hear it with yours. No, we're getting some. I just got my chems correct for my pool, so now of course tomorrow I'll immediately grab some water and take it over to Leslie's and get it remanaged. Figure out where I'm off. I just got all the algae out of it ready. I'm trying to make it crystal clear by Memorial Day. That's my big crystal clear by Memorial Day, and it's pretty clear. I mean, it's clear now. It's just that there's little bits of algae that are here and there that are just on some of the rocks and stuff like that from the winter, and so I'm just trying to scrape those off and get it all the way
my
down.
motor died on mine, so I've got
my control panel died on mine, and so it's all black. So I can't do 24-hour. I can only do the 8-hour that I have it programmed for because it's still working. I just can't change it. All right, see you later.